ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਐਨਆਰਆਈ ਵਰਲਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਮੈਂ ਹਾਂ ਰੁਪਿੰਦਰ ਕੌਰ। ਹਰ ਸਾਲ ਮਾਰਚ ਦੇ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਵਿਮਨਸ ਡੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਰਾਬਰਤਾ ਦੇਣ ਦੀ। ਪਰ ਪੈਂਡੈਮਿਕ ਦੇ ਚਲਦਿਆਂ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ, ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਲਈ, ਇਸੇ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਅੱਜ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਆਫ ਵਿਮਨ ਐਂਡ ਜੈਂਡਰ ਇਕੁਐਲਿਟੀ ਮਾਰੀਅਮ ਮੌਨਸੈਫ ਤੇ ਵਿਮਨ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਬੰਧਿਤ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਸਾਊਥ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਸੋਨੀਆ ਸਿੱਧੂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ।
Thank you so much, Minister and MP Sidhu, for taking out time for PTC.
Thank you for having us. I'm so excited Minister are with us, and thank you, Rupinder, for having us. For all Bramptonian, today we can spread our message, and we'll give our message to all Bramptonian. Thank you, Minister, for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Sonia. Hello, Rupinder.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you here. Actually, we are having this discussion because every year in the month of March, we have seen thousands of women. They are coming together to lift each other up. This time, though, it was virtually, but we would like to know what exactly government is doing to help the women who have been worstly affected in the pandemic. So, Minister, I would like to know, as government's economic recovery plan will be crafted to help women, so what will be done to help women, and what will be done to build fairer Canada?
Well, firstly, let me give a happy belated Women's Day greeting to every woman watching this, and to you colleagues. This is an important year in that we get to celebrate our achievements, but also recognize that women have been hard hit by COVID. And Black women, Indigenous women, racialized women, including Southeast Asian women, they are on the front lines of the fight against COVID in healthcare work, in our long-term care homes, in essential jobs. Women are taking on additional care responsibilities with kids at home, and they're helping with online learning and looking after parents and grandparents who also need extra help. We've seen rates of domestic violence, violence against women, and online exploitation go up during COVID. And of course, we've also seen job losses from women. Women lost jobs faster than men, and they're picking up those jobs slower than men. And our government is counting very closely what's happening. The investments we've made so far, for example, with the CERB, with the wage subsidy, with the business supports, the community supports, the whole point of them has been to keep people at home and to save lives. And those investments are keeping people whole. People can pay for groceries and for rent and for their kids' additional needs. But moving forward, we're going to need to make sure that women are back in the workforce. Universal early learning and childcare is a big part of the solution. Providing women with the skills and training they need to get into good jobs and to stay there is another big part of the solution. And of course, creating safer homes, streets, online workplaces. Sonia's our vice president, vice chair of the Status of Women Committee, and they're doing really important work on how to keep women safe and healthy and how to get them back into the workforce. And we're very much paying attention to those reports and working with colleagues like MP Sidhu to make this transition from a recession to a better economy easier. But of course, Rupinder, none of this can happen until we beat the virus. So the vaccines are the first big next step.
Minister, as you mentioned that government is working and Women's Committee is working to help women. MP Sidhu, we would like to know, we have seen Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland announce task force on women and economy. So what sectors will be represented in this?
Thank you, Rupinder. It's a great question. And first of all, I want to thank you, Minister Monsa, for making it a priority to be with the Bramptonians through PTC this afternoon. We know you're busy recognizing International Women's Month across the country. I know last time you were in Brampton South, you met with my youth council and some small businesses. Recently, we spoke about the feminist recovery, and you also appeared at the Status of Women Committee. The task force on women, Rupinder, this is, I think this is a great, I really commend that they made the task force on women and the economy is a group of 18 experts who come from diverse professional and cultural backgrounds, including South Asians, and chaired by our Deputy Prime Minister, the first ever female finance minister, Krista Freeland. It will play a key part in advising our government to make sure that women in all sectors will not be left behind when we are rebuilding our economy. As the Minister said, we are helping women in businesses, in every step of the way. But for the task force, there's expertise comes from the business sector, health, not-for-profit, childcare, labor, academia. We need to have a different voices at the table. We are preparing the 2021 budget. Since this time last year, almost 80% of those have left the workforce are women. So it is important to recognizing them, and they had to don't leave the jobs to take on a caregiving responsibility. So we are stronger as a country when women are able to fully participate in the economy.
Definitely. Minister, we would like to know, we have seen COVID-19 has sent women workforce backward. So being the Minister of Women and Gender Equality, what do you think could be the key reasons that women are disproportionately affected?
Well, women care, and the responsibilities for caring for their loved ones is often shouldered by women. Women in my own family are looking after their kids, looking after their parents, looking after their neighbors and other extended family members. And that's really hard work, and it takes time. There's also a recognition that women, particularly newcomer women, racialized women, and I know that Brampton is no stranger to this, women were in jobs that were already precarious, right? Women were working in restaurants and in long-term care homes, in healthcare. Women were working in tourism jobs, and they're working in sectors that COVID hurt the most right away. So that's another reason. And without, schools being open, with fewer spaces for before and after school programs, with fewer childcare spaces, that has made it harder for women to get back into the workforce. And we're watching and tracking very closely what's happening. As Sonia said, the Women in the Economy Task Force that Minister Freeland and Fortier have set up is going to get practical advice from business leaders, community leaders to get women back into the workforce. But we also know that issues like housing are part of it. Creating safer communities free of racism and discrimination is part of it. Getting those vaccines into arms is part of it. And as the vaccine rolls out, we hope to see an increase in labor force participation, including for women.
But Minister, as you mentioned about the racialized women, apart from this workforce, the task force, because the task force will be based on the advice. So apart from this task force, what is being done right now for the racialized and immigrant women?
Okay, so first of all, let me just say, for all the ways that women have been hit hard by COVID, there has never been more women at decision-making tables in Canada's history. In fact, let me tell you just how strong our Southeast Asian woman representation is in the House of Commons. The vice president, the vice chair of the Standing Committee on Women, Sonia Sidhu, also just introduced a bill in the House of Commons to develop a framework to better support Canadians with diabetes. The chair of our Immigration and Citizenship Committee, Salma Zahid, the chair of the Procedure and House Committee, we have the amazing Ruby Sahota, the chair of our Justice Committee, Ekra Khalid. She's also the chair of the Liberal Women's Caucus. The woman responsible for vaccine, Anita Anand, our minister there. The woman responsible for youth and addressing racism and greater inclusion, Minister Bardish Chagger. We've got Dr. Supriya Sharma, for example, advising on the official side. We've got this incredible range of representatives in the Prime Minister's office and in government. The point I'm making is, first of all, representation matters, and Southeast Asian women are strongly and very well represented at the table. For skills training, we've put out $1.5 billion in transfers to provinces and territories. So in Ontario, they can choose to increase training for free, for example, for personal support workers. There's also a need for early learning and childcare workers. We've also provided money to all provinces and territories to increase the pay for essential frontline workers. There's about $3 billion on the table. The Canada Child Benefit is not only cutting child poverty rates, so fewer kids go to bed hungry, but parents are getting extra money through the Canada Child Benefit to provide for the additional costs that those kids may have. Beyond that, we've delivered money into bank accounts of community organizations in regions like Peel to make sure that, whether it's immigration settlements or safety from violence and abuse or support for youth, that the organizations on the ground have the supports they need to look after their communities. And maybe I'll say this too. We have $100 million feminist response and recovery fund that is accepting applications as we speak. Sonia has been working very hard with her community to bring forward applications to this program. If you have an idea on how to improve women's health and safety, on how to improve their workforce participation, this fund could be for you. Visit women.gc.ca to get more information or reach out to your member of parliament MPCDU.
ਤੇ ਫਿਲਹਾਲ ਸਮਾਂ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦਾ। ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਆਫ ਵਿਮਨ ਐਂਡ ਜੈਂਡਰ ਇਕੁਐਲਿਟੀ ਮਰੀਅਮ ਮੁਨਸਿਫ ਤੇ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਸਾਊਥ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਸੋਨੀਆ ਸਿੱਧੂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜਾਰੀ ਰਹੇਗੀ। ਜਲਦ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋਣੇ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ।
Well, Minister, it's good to know the different roles women are playing in the House of Commons and Public Health Committee. MP Sidhu, I would like to know if we talk specifically about South Asian women, they are being hardly affected because we have seen rise in the data of domestic violence. So is there any funding announced during pandemic for the women? They can cope up with this?
Thank you, Rupinder. Impact women in many ways, especially racialized women. I recently had a meeting with the Peel Police Chief Nish to discuss issues important to our residents. One thing our police chief said is that during the pandemic, the number of domestic and gender-based violence cases keeps increasing. I know Minister will agree with me. This is unacceptable, and that is why Minister Monsef, together with the Prime Minister, provided $100 million to frontline organizations supporting women facing gender-based violence. Over 1,000 organizations serving over 800,000 women received emergency support and Women and Gender Equality Canada last year, including shelter-based, mostly in Brampton too, with Minister Monsef's help, and we are there. Thank you, Minister Monsef. Now we know that we have a great voice at the cabinet table, but we know there's much more to do. That is why we recently launched the 100 million Feminist Response and Recovery Fund to support projects and programs. That is also help to keep a gender equality. The other thing I just want to know, we know how hard it is for women to run their businesses during these challenging times. That is why Government of Canada helping women through entrepreneur funding. I think that's a great help for especially those women who are running the businesses. I know today Minister Monsef is here, and then she's always listened to us, and we are three women, Ruby, Kamal, and me, and Rupinder, you, Jasmeena Meenakshi, also running the PTC. See, racialized women, South Asian women. Today, we are thriving because the government has their back. So thank you, Minister Monsef. I'm really appreciating today here on the PTC platform, you are giving your views, you're sharing your views to Bramptonian. I think it's a great, and then there's a lot of funding available, and we are all MPs are there to help all the Bramptonians.
Sure. MP Sidhu, as you mentioned about the Canada Feminist and Responsive Summit, Minister, I would like to know what do you think are the key takeaways from this summit?
The key takeaways from this summit, first of all, was, you know, there are more women in charge than ever before in Canada's history, and those voices matter. It matters that the MPs representing the Brampton area have experiences that the residents can relate to. When Sonia Sidhu comes to the Prime Minister, comes to the team and says, we have issues around gender-based violence and human trafficking and workforce development, that voice matters and it is respected. So that was one. Two, the other takeaway was, even though we couldn't come together, we managed, because women are very creative that way, we managed to bring together some 3,000 leaders from across the country. The Prime Minister was there, the Deputy Prime Minister was there, our colleagues were there, and the biggest takeaway from me was, and it was my favorite part, at the beginning and at the end. At the beginning, Chrystia Freeland came and she had this really thoughtful conversation with women about how to get women back to work. And what she heard from these, renowned feminists was, we have your back, Chrystia Freeland, dream big. And that's a really big deal because there's never been, as Sonia said, a woman in that role. And, she's qualified, but she will be judged differently than her predecessor. So that meant a lot. And towards the end, the Prime Minister came and he stayed for the whole session, by the way, and he listened and he said that he's happy that we are not alone as a government. We, as a government, since the beginning, have said what's good for women is good for their families, is good for their communities, is good for the economy. And what he said was, I need more people coming to help us because these are not easy solutions and that we're not alone, right? Community leaders are with us. Women themselves want to see us push to support them more. Society is coming to terms with what is good for women is good for all of us. And that was a really important moment that, for the first time, everybody's saying childcare is good for the economy, not just the feminists. For the first time, we're hearing everybody talk about domestic violence and gender-based violence. And it's not something quiet behind closed doors, but we're starting to talk about it. And that we have 4 vaccine candidates now, and every Canadian can get 10 shots of vaccine. That's how much we bought for everybody. And when this is over, when the pandemic is over, our job isn't done. There's a lot of hard work to do to build back better. But Canadians are going to be okay. Canadian women are going to be okay because there's a government in charge that respects and values diversity of race and gender. And we've got your back for as long as it takes, whatever it takes, as the Prime Minister has said.
Well, thank you so much, Minister and MP Sidhu, for taking out your time and talking to us regarding what is being done to help the women during this pandemic. Thank you so much and stay safe.
Thank you.
ਸੋ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਲਈ ਬਸ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੀ। ਫਿਲਹਾਲ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰੱਖੋ ਆਪਣਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਤੇ ਦੇਸ਼ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀਆਂ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਬਣੇ ਰਹੋ PTC ਦੇ ਨਾਲ।